to keep an ear on the music of the spheres and examine how human genius can tap into those harmonic landscapes. This is Neon Galactic. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget, pretty please, to like this video and subscribe to this channel, and if you're so inclined, join our little society on patreon.com/neongalactic. I'm doing my best to make a go of this work, but I need your help. Every single contribution helps me to stay afloat, to feed my family, and keep these vital conversations coming. I've spoken with a dazzling number of visionary experts, experiencers, thinkers, and cognitive revolutionaries, all to help crack open the hard shell of dogmatic denialism. Either we embrace this evolutionary change, or I believe we succumb to the accelerating degradation of our human spirit. Stake your claim and join us. Memberships start at just $3 a month. By signing up, you'll get exclusive content, early releases, a Discord membership, and that warm and fuzzy feeling that always follows a good deed done for good reasons. Our guest today, Mike Fiorito, has been on the show before. He's an award-winning author, thinker, musician, journalist, and mystic who has, over these past several years, written several books that explore the nature of UFOs, visionary experience, God, and the human spirit, often through the lens of music and how it opens up access to transcendent possibility. His latest book, The Innerspace of Outer Space, follows the work of Sun Ra, Brian Eno, Steve Halpern, Yes, and Pink Floyd, among others, to demonstrate that our species retains all its mystic faculties, including its native access to those subtle realms and bodies that best understand the power of vibration and of music to help free the soul. Reaching back through the evolution of human thought, Fiorito follows themes that first arose with tribal shaman and fireside trance states, ideas that were later crystallized through the work of Pythagoras, Plato, the Gnostics, and Neoplatonists. All this to say that as we face what appears to be a coming realization that we are not alone in the universe, that this daimonic reality has forever been lurking in the shadows of psyche, we're not as unprepared as one might think. Music is a vehicle, a starship primed to launch us back to source, and music lover Mike Fiorito invites us on board for the ride. By conducting this orchestral assembly of facts old and new, some from history and some from the latest releases of recognized musical savants in the 21st century, Fiorito demonstrates as much as humans have, by conducting this orchestral assembly of facts old and new, some from history and some from the latest releases of recognized musical savants in the 21st century, Fiorito demonstrates that as much as humans have changed over the millennia, our souls are made of more permanent stuff. Welcome, Mike.
James, wow, thank you. I think we can just stop right here. I think that was great. No, that's as I said to you before we started. That's one of the reasons I really love coming on your program is you're very thorough, and you take seriously the work that we all bring, and you do your own excellent work. So, thank you for that. That was a great summation of what I'm going after. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem, man. I enjoy your work immensely. I think that, I mean, we're passing some compliments around. You do a
Yeah,
thorough job of yourself of doing the research and finding connections among various spheres of human endeavor that all kind of surround and interpenetrate with the phenomenon, as we've come to call it. So
exa
I think your work is a real synthesis in a lot of ways. So
Thank
thank you
you.
for that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really what I'm going for. So if you noticed, and I'm sure you did, that I kind of took a step back on this one. And actually, I think UFO Symphonic also, I think it was demonstrated there, but maybe the title was, I just love the title UFO Symphonic. I just loved the title. But this one, I took a step back to put the UFO phenomena as a spoke in the hub. So it's not you see there's a lot of that subject matter in this book. But what I was really going for, and it was an extension. So I'd been doing work on UFO Symphonic, and of course, when I'm writing a book, there's new stuff that's accumulating. There's new things I'm thinking about. There are new books that I'm reading. There are new things that I'm writing. But I have to say, that's the next one. That's, you got to stop at some point. It's just, it just becomes. I remember I gave a presentation of UFO Symphonic, and a woman asked, "How come you only talked about music and not the other arts?" And I said, "Well, I didn't want 1,000-page book, number one, and I'm a musician, and I'm going after that subject matter more directly." And I think it succinctly to say that music deliteralizes. It sort of softens the concreteness of the reality around us. It loosens
Hmm.
it. I mean,
Yeah.
if we give it that, if we allow it to. And as I think I probably said to you before, it's music and sound. So it's not just music. There is something that, of course, they're related, but sound, meaning chanting or uh, binaural beats, even just like frequencies. Stephen
Yeah.
Halpern's made lots of music, using 432 hertz, kind of for meditative and kind of harmonious thinking.
Mhm.
Whereas the solfeggio frequency 963 hertz is, I mean, when you listen to that, you're sort of like gushing, and it's not, it's meditative in a different way because it's more, it's like almost love kind of washing over you.
Yeah.
But music is a, it gives us access to things that are right here.
Yeah.
They're, music is a thought form,
Yeah.
and also one thing that you mentioned and to reflect on is music is not one thing. It's a kind of pyramidal structure or an architecture, a thought form that has architecture, and however you want to engage on it. Uh, like, to give one example, um, yes, music can deliteralize and sort of break away that thick substrate of reality that kind of binds us and keeps us in place.
Yeah.
But it can loosen that, and say, for example, in the Eno stories that I wrote about and writing about Brian Eno, there are kind of spaces that he creates.
Real quick for the
And
audience, Brian Eno is just if people aren't aware, can you give me
oh
a
yeah,
graph on? Yeah.
oh sorry, yeah, Brian Eno, he 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 was a producer. He produced David Bowie. He produced U2, lots of other folks. But one of his genius was he created what we call ambient music, and it's kind of avant-garde. He's avant-garde in not in the way that some people might hear that and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't bear to listen to that."
Slapping
He's
fish
a
together or whatever,
right,
it's like the,
which I love. I mean, I can get into a lot of stuff,
yeah.
but his stuff tends to be meditative, and when you're listening to it, and I don't know what Brian Eno's intentions were. I did, as you saw in the book, I looked to see was his interests. He's certainly around people that have occult interests. He uses the oblique strategies, which is like using the tarot to help you kind of investigate your unconscious and get out of your own way. So the oblique strategies, he has recommendations if you're in a creative process, and he has you pull a card like you would with tarot, and it kind of gives you a suggestion. Keep doing what you're doing. You know, you choose the first thought you had. Go with your instinct. These kind of maybe counterintuitive things that make a whole lot of sense. Um, but one of the interesting things is in his music and in all music, I think you find ensouled beings. They're kind of tucked away in layers.
Yeah.
And I explore that in various ways, but I don't say that lightly. There's humanity and there's being. Um, and I use the word being. I've been using this phrase ecology of being. Uh, there's Terence McKenna had the phrase ecology of souls. Joshua Cutchin has the book Ecology of Souls. But there's ecology of being, this there's more of me than I'm aware of, but it's beyond me.
Yeah.
It's this maybe collective unconscious. It's this realm where it's not rational. It may have rational components, uh, but there's more experience to access.
Yeah.
Is really what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, what struck me when I was reading through your book is that, and I think you even explicitly stated at one point that, I mean, music is often anti-conceptual. I mean, it is, if with lyrics you can get conceptual with the work, and you can do, you can have it be as, symbols that represent various things and ideas. But fundamentally, it's the vibrations of the notes and the harmonies and how they impact us emotionally. And as I understand the subtle forms and the limited research that I've done, basically like the astral realm is a realm of pure emotion, right?
Hmm.
And it's dangerous for that reason. And where you try to, it's not a place that you often want to dwell. You want to try to get above that to the sentient level, I think is, as you called it in the book. But
Hmm.
to my mind, that's where, and on the astral level, that's where music has its effect on human beings. And to watch a crowd get affected by, if they're at a concert or whatever else, and the music from the speakers is washing over them, and it's a energetic, say, and there's a mosh pit or a dance floor or
Hmm.
whatever, it the way that everyone is collectively experiencing that same emotional moment demonstrates the reality of the astral to me, and
Hmm.
it's yeah, it's just for me, it's like a direct. It's like if there was a tree and you took one of those maple syrup spigots and you stuck it into the tree and you turn the valve and all of a sudden the syrup is pouring out. That's what's happening with music and spirit.
Yeah.
It's like that's just you do away with all of the accoutrements of human intellect that we've accumulated over the past 70,000 years, and that's the pure stuff. And we've
Hmm.
forgotten in almost every other aspect of our lives how to be in that place because we are so restricted by all the labels and names and things that we've categories that we've come up with. But in the moments when we lose ourselves to music, we're going back before all of that and kind of finding the pure essence of what it means to
Hmm.
be human. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Prelingual,
Yeah.
and it's when we hear, and I'm always cautious because it's music and sound, and there's a
Yeah.
spectrum,
Sure.
and we instantly are lulled into a dream,
Hmm.
and we can go very deep into that dream. We can explore that dream in depth. We can go along that journey, or we can just experience it. And that's why I use the analogy of this architecture. You take something like, just say, for example, like disco, right? People love to hate disco. I actually don't hate disco. I grew up listening to it. My sisters are slightly older, and both were disco dancers. It was all the rave, when I was a
Hmm.
kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but disco is also a kind of composite form. It's a thought form of culture condensed into this uh, this phenomenon. Just the beats, the rhythms, the harmonies, and all of the flashiness and all of the, even say, the things people don't like about it. I think, like any art form, you have the stuff that's just replica, the stuff that's just made to. There's tons of bad disco, but there is great disco music, and it is this composite of Latin culture, of R&B, of things that preceded, of Motown, and then just kind of melded together. And that's just one form of music. So you could listen to music, just dance to it. And you could be, and I'm not suggesting anybody do anything that they don't want to do. But there's also, who has not, well, I guess some people maybe don't, they may not be lulled into the ritual. They may not be lulled into the dance, lulled into the trance of what that music can do. And
Yeah.
then you add to it, the visual components, the lights, the the disco, ball and the glittery thing. But
The
I think,
energy, and if it's like if it was in a club back in the day, there's this sexual content to it that is,
yeah,
I mean, it's just all like part of the energy that
yeah,
arises out of it, alchemical, right?
yes, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was thinking that, next thing right there. And at least in with where I grew up, I mean, I grew up in New York City and in Queens, and uh, it was okay to dance. It was okay. It was not a bad thing. And my sisters, two older sisters, and my brother, when we would hear that music, we would get up and dance. And
Mhm.
that's just one form. I talk about different forms in the book, and there's music I don't talk about in the book. But just to go on that for another moment, if you take something like the Delta Blues, in a similar way, the Delta Blues is this composite of different musics. It's African rhythms played on Western instruments. You'll hear American Indian chanting, like in Charlie Patton. You'll hear this, all of these different components kind of drain into this. And of course, there's not one Delta blues. There are many Delta blues, but it is a piece of culture, as well as, and you can just meditate on that. That in and of itself is a thought form to meditate and to dream, uh, to engage with the past, to engage with being. So that's one of the threads that I'm contemplating here as as I was writing the book, and also as now I'm working on my another book as well. Uh, I think that's often what I'm saying is nothing completely new. But you mentioned
Yeah,
Pythagoras. There have been other uh, writers, thinkers, philosophers throughout the centuries, and not just in the West, that have venerated and acknowledged the power of music.
yeah.
Somehow it just gets kind of shelved. What I tried to do here was to make this like a perennial philosophy, a compendium of the different inputs. Maybe use popular music,
Yeah. And I think
and
that the people that you picked were conscious of that on some level at least, and
yes,
using it to that purpose rather than it just being a byproduct. They were very much aware of the ability of music to transport people and lift them up and vivify kind of spirit,
right.
I think.
And it's like I said in the beginning. Was it the preface, or I forget what even I called it, but I was quoting Harry Smith, the who put out the American Anthology of Folk Music. When he said, "I saw America changed through music." I mean, he was an alchemist. He was a magus. So Harry Smith was a polymath, um, a filmmaker, writer. He put together this anthology of American folk music that was listened to by Bob Dylan, by Joan Baez, basically that whole group of people, and uh, launched the folk revival, which evolved into bringing social change
Yeah.
to America for sure, and to the world. And Harry Smith knew when he was putting together this complex set, and he chose music. It wasn't always the best representation in terms of quality, but
Hmm.
he chose what was the most rural, what was the most regional,
Yeah.
uh, what was in a way odd, weird. The subject matters were odd and weird. Murder, um, depression, despair, um, the panoply of human emotions. Um, but this ability for music to be a kind of a pill that is swallowed and can bring about tremendous change.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a quote I want to read from your book. It's
Please.
rather long, but it's from Rudolf Steiner, who and anthroposophy. How do you pronounce that? I think that's right.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Yeah, that's his how he branched out from the theosophists to form anthroposophy, I think.
just to
Anyway,
make it more confusing. Yeah,
make it more confusing, but he was a visionary genius and had experience traveling through the subtle realms. He's one of the world's Anyway, he's a great mystic.
Hmm.
And the quote that you used was, according to Rudolf Steiner, when a person listens to music, something profound happens beneath the surface. According to the seer's vision, the rhythms and colors of the tones flow into the etheric body, the subtle layer beneath our physical forms, causing it to resonate harmoniously. This resonance brings a feeling of pleasure. The astral body, which governs emotion, enhances this effect. The more it responds to the music, the more its vibrations influence the etheric body, amplifying the emotional experience of the listener or composer. Sometimes this harmony extends into the sentient body, where a conflict may occur. If the sentient body's vibrations dominate, the result is uplifting music in a major key. If the etheric body overcomes, Steiner says, the sentient body, the music turns somber, producing the melancholy beauty of minor key melodies. In essence, and this is the nut here, to experience music is to reconnect with one's spiritual origin. Music reflects the soul's true home, evoking a deep recognition. This is why pretty much anyone can be deeply moved by it. In those moments of elevation, the listener feels a profound truth. Quote, yes, I come from another world, and in music, I remember it.
Mm. Yeah,
That's
great choice.
beautiful.
It's music takes us out of our ego,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
uh, the one of the artists that you mentioned that I began the book with, who was very much into Steiner and into the theosophy, uh, was influenced by those things very much so, was Sun Ra.
Yeah, which
And
okay. Now, if people would
yeah.
want a great and sort of brilliant but rather compact biography of Sun Ra, your book is a great place to start. What a fascinating dude! And I have known of him, and I've talked to Stephen Finley and Marcus Red on the show, and those
Oh,
are
cool.
brilliant guys, and we've discussed it. But this is as close as I've come to reading a sort of a longer form exposition, and it makes me want to read more. But just what a story and what a man. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Sun Ra, jazz musician, born in Birmingham, Alabama, and I don't remember exact date, but let's say like 1910 or something like that. Um, a very bright, gifted person in all things. And what I loved about I'm attracted to, we talked about this syncretic kind of philosophers or thinkers. I'm always attracted to people that bring things together
Mhm.
and create maybe even a system that incorporates this architecture of ideas. It's just it's interesting. All of the people I wrote about in the book, have that in common. There's a sort of framework that they're creating in. Certainly, Brian Eno, Sun Ra, Yes, Pink Floyd, Stephen Halpern, and there's something about that. It's a kind of game of how we make and create art. But
Mhm.
just to go back to Sun Ra, so growing up in Birmingham, incredibly profusely racist culture at that time, for sure, and yet was
Still
able to.
is.
Right,
Sorry,
yeah,
probably.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm not trying to disrespect anyone or
I
put
know, I
anyone
know. Of
down.
course not.
Yeah, but at that time, especially, I mean, egregiously so. And despite all of that, he goes to school and graduates with really distinguishes himself. He teaches himself piano, then learns piano. But he read everything. He read science fiction. He titles songs after ideas in popular mechanics. Um, he claimed he was from Saturn. So he claimed he wasn't born, but he was from Saturn, but he was eternal. He was never born. Um, and he
There's a
believed,
Go
yeah,
ahead. Well, there's a quote I have here about that. He
please.
says, I don't remember when I was born, and this is exactly what I want to teach everybody, that it is important to liberate oneself from the obligation to be born, because this experience doesn't help us at all. It is important for the planet that its inhabitants do not believe in being born, because whoever is born has to die. I love it,
Great
man.
quote. And let's like talk about that for a moment. And that's why this I find these sources of music so rich in spiritual ideas. When you take what he just said right there, that you try to find a place to begin this in this cycle. Uh, so here I am. I'm alive. I'm a being. I consume. To stay alive, I have to eat. Um, at what point are the substances I'm eating? At what point do they become me? You know, then I expel those substances. They return to the earth, and there's this kind of the cycle. We are all part of this cycle of it's kind of an ebb and flow, a give and take. And I think that's kind of what he was talking about. And yes, this is on a terrestrial level that we have this experience, but it's also beyond Earth too. Um, and it was very important as I was writing this to have one eye looking at outer space and one eye looking at inner space, one eye looking at the sky, one eye looking at the Earth. Uh, the farther we go inside it here, the farther we go out there, and vice versa. Very important, at least to my thinking, what I was trying to synthesize. And so what Ra felt is that he was told, he was taken, he was visited by beings, sentient beings, and he was told to bring music to harmonize the people of Earth because clearly we are out of harmony. We are disharmonious and in disarray. I mean, look at right now. I mean, it's not like we've solved the problem.
Yeah.
Um, we're in a spiritual crisis. We really are, and that it was important as I was writing through all of these artists. The music is also at least it pushes you towards greater intention. So I realize we can't always we even as we think we're doing the right things, sometimes it's not doing the right thing and it's leading to bad consequences. But good intention, which is slippery. I mean, you can get into an ethical. This can be a 4-hour discussion of ethics, but we all know what good intentions are. Trying to do good to help people to better their lives, to give them more freedom, and all of these all of these composers have this notion of like ecological awareness
Hmm.
of acknowledging the sanctity of the planet of the earth, and this was very important to Ra as well. And he believed it. If you there's a PBS uh, documentary out about him, and while it doesn't really go into his spiritual stuff, it really it almost clowns that part a bit.
Yeah.
But we do get a sense, and we can go and find more about Ra. We can go if we want to look. We watch his films. He often spoke in paradoxes and was a trickster. He
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Yeah.
represents, because when you go like, if I just give you truth, bang, maybe be a little cautious of that. Maybe be suggestive of it. Put it in the form of a poem, or because truth is elusive. But he would say, he said things like, "Some people call me Mr. Ra. Some people call me Mystery." And then a reporter said, "And what did your mother call you, trying to be a smartass?" And he said, "Well, she called me son." Always clever, always with a double entendre, and very cognizant of the inequity toward African Americans. Very cognizant, and he had a way of delivering that critique that was thought provoking. It was
Yeah.
interesting, and there was this race to space. It was almost like an exodus to escape the inequity and the kind of horror of that circumstance of that time.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think his message was beyond. It was for all people, and for uh, to make the world a better place. Period. All people,
Yeah.
all beings.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, like from what you described there, and then also from what you wrote in the book, it's obvious that Sun Ra is emblematic of that. The black experience of UFOs is different than what
Hmm.
the greater culture is. Like you were very explicit to say that he was selected by non-human intelligence, not abducted, because
Right.
there is hardly. I mean, the abduction fact is usually the black culture tends to read it a little bit differently. There's almost a sense of salvation sometimes in being chosen by non-human intelligence. And according to Stephen Finley, who I've talked to a little bit about it, I mean, I'm vastly oversimplifying, but it's interesting to see how those two, those phenomena get read differently depending on the cultural, milieu or whatever. And I think you
Yeah.
do a good job of explicating that in the book.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I spoke to Stephen and to Marcus Reed as well, and as I said in the book, very very helpful to me, providing insights. I read was it Afro, I can't remember what the title of his essay is, Astro African. I don't remember, Marcus Reed, and I loved his idea of how Ra plays with the notion of blackness and space and being, as opposed to being empty, but being richly deep. And um, that was something I really hadn't thought of before. And actually, he had great insights into, maybe some things I should say about how I'm writing about this. From what perspective am I writing? A musicological perspective, and so on, so I could kind of context it. I didn't want to be, I'm not an academic, so I don't write, I'm not writing for a paper, I'm not writing for, uh, my goal is to write syncretically,
Mhm.
to think like an artist, uh, to hopefully, while I'm also doing research and bringing scholarship into it, I want it to sound poetic. That's actually my goal, is to hopefully make it sound beautiful and have at least pockets of poetry that's strewn about the the research points that I'm making as well. Um,
I mean, that's one of the things I enjoy about your book is that how you intersperse subjective experiences of your own or dreams that you've had, or at one point even
mm,
envisioned of these poetic, sort of explosively colorful experiences that, redound down to, again, the theme of the book, but are your own signature,
mm.
motifs, which I think is sort of ties you in to the whole story, which, yeah.
Well, that's, and I appreciate that. That's the goal. And my feeling is, all writing is subjective. I mean, there's no such thing. We can push towards objectivity. We can stretch for that, but it's always subjective. And my strength, I feel, and what I'm most comfortable is narration and in storytelling. Although I love the discovery of writing and research, it's just great fun for me to have all these thoughts in my head and dream about them and think about them as I'm on my way to the store, and like having them compete for, which goes, like fish in the water, what goes upstream and what uh, gets somewhere, and what goes down the cul-de-sac and trapped in an eddy somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, but Sun Ra was also using the instrumentation. So one thing that was important is to me is there's this music comes from, our senses of music come from nature, from wind,
Mhm.
from the sound of water, and even beyond. You have shakers in Latin music. That kind of polyrhythm didn't exist in Western music, but they come from uh, natural places. They come from natural origins. But then music takes on the even the systems of thought of a day and the technologies of a day. So explore that for a moment. If you
Yeah.
listen to like Baroque music, it kind of sounds like clockwork. Interconnected parts moving in a clock-like way. Bach, of course, Bach is beautiful and lush and gorgeous, but there is that element of it, and that kind of reflects the science of the times.
Hmm.
Um, when we get to Beethoven, you have the pianoforte, you have a different kind of uh, piano. You can get softer sounds, you can get sustain. That gives rise to a different kind of composition. And so Ra, as a jazz musician, using a Moog synthesizer, um, using the clavioline, these very strange instruments, because he's sort of casting, he's looking, he's searching for what does the future sound like. That really struck me. That component of all of these composers that I looked at is they're searching for, how do you project into the future? But ultimately, to project into the future, I'm going to draw from what we know,
Yeah.
the current, which is reflective, and why this is relevant is, as I drew in the book, drew the analogy that as we encounter the phenomena, we encounter it changes with the
Yeah.
culture,
Yeah.
and it sort of it keeps reflecting back to us what it thinks, what we want to see. So is that an illuminated Marian apparition? Is it a jinn? It's funny how the phenomena kind of looks like us in color and in shapes and sizes. And of course now the UFO, which is this highly technological thing.
Yeah.
And to me, and I love UFO. I just love the idea of UFO. I love the concept of it. I love the pictures and drawings, and this is where what I grew up reading, Omni magazine and science fiction and fantasy magazines, and which I talk about in the book. But it's the dressing of the phenomenon is just a mirror of what it thinks we want to see.
Yeah. And it seems like the people that you are focusing on in the book put on the very edge of pushing that sort of evolution of sound into that technological area that the UFO is occupying. It's like you have the evolving mythology of the UFO, and then you also have the evolving aesthetics of these particular artists, and they're sort of backing each other up and reinforcing each other as we move into the future, which is fascinating. And you have such an encyclopedic knowledge of the technology, of the instruments used, of the recording sessions. I mean, it's really something reading it's like you not only are getting a rumination on UFOs and folklore and all of that, but then also, a musicologist's like knowledge of how things evolved over time in the music industry and in folk music and all of that. It's really, really something.
That's cool. And I did a lot of reading and research and drew from that. And there are some people that love that detail. I happen to love that detail. That how does it work, and uh, what is the makeup of it? I realize for some people that could be like, oh gosh, fast forward to the next thing. But you connected with it, and I'm so delighted to hear that.
I'm a musician, so part of it
Yeah,
is like
yeah,
having, played with some of the stuff. I'm like, oh wow, the ideas that are. But I mean, for other folks, I could see it might not be, but it's
yeah.
it's it's worthwhile no matter what, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a musician, and I always, I occupy a space where I'm not a purely a UFO guy, and I'm not purely a music person. So I'm sort of, I'm in some middle space that's maybe in the middle of nowhere. I'm not really sure, but I'm glad you're there with me, James. I can only write what is coming to me and what is authentic, and I'm hoping uh, that other people connect with it. So I do realize there's this netherworld of, well, is he talking about music or is he talking about the phenomena? Well, they're the same to me.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, there's that song. I encourage every listener to check it out by Sun Ra called Space Probe, and he's on a Moog, and it's just like, wow. And if you like jazz, he's sort of blasting like Ornette Coleman or just doing this far out, avant-garde thing. But just listening to it, I can feel the desire for discovery and this journey and this probing of space probe,
Yeah.
casting about, and that's and I realize maybe that song you don't listen to all the time. You don't put it on at parties necessarily, and it's not for everyone and for all the time. But Ra, as a jazz innovator, bringing these instruments in, which were taboo, and I would say he in his time definitely received. The critics were harsh. Uh, Maybe some fellow jazz musicians and jazz critics, but he eventually brought people over to his camp, and I think people look back now and recognize the huge contribution and how way ahead of his time he was in so many ways. I mean, he's credited with being the father of Afrofuturism, and that word didn't exist when he was alive. It may have existed at some point. I think it's in the 90s when that word is created. But this idea of recognizing the mythological past of African Americans, just Africa, period,
Hmm.
recognizing that deep, rich mythological past, but connecting it to a future. Um, why any group of people should has a has a right to acknowledge uh, their literature, their myths, and to put them on the same pedestal as any other tradition. I mean,
Yeah.
some cultures are more literate, some cultures history of have more history because they won the wars and things like that.
Yeah.
But uh, I think he was very successful. You look at groups like Earth, Wind, and Fire. You see these images, Egyptian temples, spaceships, kind of all kind of put together, funkadelic, Parliament. Nothing new. They were very, very conscious of Ra and his contribution and built upon that. And it's funny, we don't even you look at an Earth, Wind, and Fire album and you may not even recognize that there's that deep history there that he
Yeah.
was establishing and connecting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's an empowerment in seizing the mythic narrative about people, and then consciously trying to construct a positive movement of that idea and sort of the trajectory of where they may be going in the future, and no longer just accepting the narratives or the myths that are foisted upon you
Hmm.
by the in this case an oppressive culture, but even if it's just the greater normative culture, it's like sort of staking your own destiny, I think, and there's huge absolute power in
Yeah.
that, I think, and I think that I mean, through Jung and other thinkers throughout the past 100 years, we're starting to learn the power of myth to shape human identity, and
Hmm.
I think that does also goes back to spirit. One aspect I wanted to ask you about this book, which was really interesting for a number of reasons. First off, I keep hearing about Meditations on the Tarot: A Journey into Christian Hermeticism. I
Hmm.
just got a copy because it kept coming up, and then I'm reading your book, and out of nowhere, you mentioned this book. Yeah,
Yeah.
there it is, and it sounds like you used it as part of your creative process, and I was hoping that you could describe
Yeah.
for us a little bit about how that worked in terms of pairing the cards with your subjects.
Yeah. I've always been interested in tarot as just a rich, history. And I think very much in images, and I think very much that way. And uh, I'm not someone that does. I don't read tarot, but I'm interested in the history and the power. I recognize the potency. Uh, you don't play around with that stuff. It's very real. So
Mhm.
what I did is I didn't want to be so dogmatic about it, but kind of use the tarot to explore how write about it. And so I drew tarot I drew cards. I was trying to use the major arcana, but the Ace of Pentacles snuck in somehow. I don't even remember how, but and more than it kind of came up more than once. So for Ra, I connected with the magician. So then I tried to, and that was a random thing. So I said, okay,
That's what I mean. People talk about, like, I used to not think any of that stuff was real, and now I'm continually blown away by how divination can work serious magic in people's lives.
Yeah,
That's just perfect. I mean, and the correlations that you draw throughout the book, the cards that go with them, given people that you were discussing in the book, it's just they all seem perfect. It's
they,
amazing, frankly.
it's funny because it just kind of worked. And
Yeah,
the Ace of Pentacles kept coming up for Pink Floyd, and there was that notion of, and it's important to remember when we begin on a spiritual path or some practice, there's always that possibility of getting lost in the wilderness. And it's important that we remain grounded. And there's a reason that I realize that maybe we want to be independent in our spiritual quest. And I certainly have all my life, but there's that also awareness of people, there's a protocol and a way of going about things because people have trodden that path. And so in the case of Pink Floyd, Sid Barrett, who was, extraordinarily talented and creative, but also paid the price for, uh, if you go with caution, and only angels dare. What is it? Where angels dare tread. Only fools
yeah,
go where angels dare tread.
yeah.
And there is that notion that when we're meditating, to have a practice and to remain to be grounded. So that it just funny, not funny, interesting that card showed up. And then I tried to weave in the imagery from there's a Sally Nichols wrote Jung. I forget exactly the title, but like a Jung's Guide to Archetype in the tarot. And so
Mhm.
she looks at the major arcana as this kind of process of individuation. So, going from the Fool card and then, cascading through the various cards.
Mhm.
And but for each of them, I wanted to use the imagery. So there's what did I choose for Stephen Halpern, the Star? So new age music, and using looking at the card and using like the poetry and making some references from various sources of tarot scholarship. Yes, funny enough, John Anderson wanted to name the group The World, and that's the card I chose. Right? And I mean, just forces at work.
Yeah.
And yes, drawing from and being very cognizant of while they projected this futuristic sound as well, being very also very folk-like and really drawing from British folk tradition, with the use of mandolins and the lyricism in some of the songs. But even their album covers having, uh, while they could look like projections in outer space, there were like chunks of earth, of green earth. And there's a lot of earth references. And they, as the writers of the music, were very aware of kind of the ecological movement and that awareness of venerating the earth as well, not just looking outward into space, but looking right here. I mean, if we can't see what's here, if we can't see all of the intelligence right here, the beauty of bird song, the incredible mystery of the forest and the mycorrhizal loom of the forest floor and the freshness of all that smell and all of that vast intelligence. I mean, how in the world are we ever going to look anywhere else and say, uh, you know, if we can't identify it in front of us,
Yeah,
how will we identify intelligence anywhere else? Is
exactly
kind of
right.
where I was going with that.
Yeah. There was one anecdote that you relayed in the book about a friend of yours who had apparently the songwriter from Yes had a UFO experience,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
was sort of part of that experience. Can you tell us that story?
yeah. That's Chris Squire. So the book is dedicated to Earl Grey Anderson, and Earl and I met. I had written For All We Know, and Earl met. We just kind of we actually never met in person, but he lived in California, and he was a music nut like I am, and also very deeply into the UFO phenomena. Very spiritual, good, really beautiful person. And he told me that experience, and that he met Chris Squire. I think his friend was, I think, a doctor, and Chris, she said she was gonna like go out with Chris Squire. I don't know. They she convinced Chris Squire to marry her or something like that. I don't remember the exact story. But so he got to know Chris Squire. He got to know Yes, and he got to be in that experience. And Chris Squire was, I think he actually stopped to urinate in the forest or something like that. And he looked over his head, and about 20 feet was this, illuminated, beautiful UFO sighting. And when he talked to Earl about it, he said, what do you think that was? And Earl said, that's just us from the future. And Chris Squire like said he wanted to like write it down, put it down somewhere. And they have there's UFO sounding music. They have actually songs that are UFO specific songs that they wrote. And John Anderson, who was the principal songwriter, is a very spiritual thinker, and very consciously draws from the Vedanta, from autobiography of a yogi,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
other spiritual sources.
Siddhartha.
Siddhartha, which I quote, copiously in the book.
Yeah,
Uh, and a very magical thinker, John Anderson, the way he conceives. I mean, he's the least of the musician in the band, and yet his ideas, his lyrics, kind of cohesively bring this thing, make Yes magical. I mean, all of
yeah.
them together for sure, but there's something. I saw John Anderson last year. He's 80 or so. I forget. A little wee of a man he is, John Anderson. And man, I mean, the band was spectacular. They were devotees of Yes. They all. This was not Yes. This is the band Geeks, or whatever their name is.
Yeah,
But they know the music splendidly. They know it probably better than Yes did.
yeah,
But they weren't. It wasn't this. Uh, it wasn't like they were repeating the music. They were playing it with love. And John Anderson, 80 years old, and hitting these he has a very high falsetto voice.
yeah.
And it was just magical, and it just
So he
incredible.
lost nothing then over the years. It sounds
I
like.
don't know. I don't know how but like a little, he was like this elfin kind of, and it really projects that this
Yeah,
because he's aware and interested in folklore and in British folklore, and Yeats's kind of investigation into Irish myth, and all of that. So there's that magician spell he casts on the music that gives it that, that that is something extra special.
yeah. I love it. In contrast to Robert Plant, who I think has lost something with his high register over the years, maybe it's all the cigarettes. But I wonder, I mean, how did you make the choices of acts to focus on? Because, like Led Zeppelin, for instance, they had a lot of occult
Yeah.
themes in their work, and I mean, they used Lord of the Rings as a lifting off point for some of their songs.
Mm.
Was there did it have to do with like positivity, maybe? I mean, what was your thinking in some of that, or
Uh,
just groups that appealed to you?
I think I wanted to make connections. So with
Mhm.
Sun Ra, it begins with Sun Ra because he's the first modern musician to begin to incorporate the kind of UFO concepts and esoteric concepts into the music at great risk, but he didn't seem to care too much about that. And
Yeah,
then Pink Floyd kind of acknowledging Ra's music, so that's sort of handing the baton. And what's interesting is that all of these musicians were so influenced by the avant-garde musics. So like Stockhausen and John Cage. It wasn't. I was actually interested to learn that they were very cognizant of these new things that were happening in the 20th century. Pink Floyd using musique concrète, if I say it correctly, but like there's found music and then created music, and um, found music could be water dripping from a waterfall, or you're creating these kind of music collages electronically. Um, I was interested to learn that, and then going from Pink Floyd to, I wanted to put New Age at the center of this, because while often derided, New Age was a place that a lot of innovation, a lot of innovative musicians came out of New Age music. It was very popular at a point in time, and as Stephen Halpern, who was kind enough to give me some insights, he had said that he believes that Brian Eno kind of derived or was inspired by his music. I could see that in developing his ambient music. So that's what he said to me. So there was this kind of movement from, it seemed to me, that connected the musicians, and that there was a framework, there was a kind of vision, a philosophy that bound their ideas, and I could have included lots more, but I really I wanted to just narrow it and uh, sort of laser focus.
Yeah.
um, that could always be book two.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one thing, I mean, we're about at an hour, which is our
Yeah.
allotted time, but I wanted to say that, like, one of the things I really appreciate about your work, and I think its importance right now in the moment that we're all kind of collectively facing, both in terms of society and the UFO subject and disclosure and all of that, is that you're someone who has obvious expertise in music and in music journalism, writing, and all of those things, and by reading your work, you kind of see a very useful model of how one sensitive person is grokking all of this and making it all fit within their own personal mythology and coming out with sort of alchemical gold. You know what I mean? It's like
Mm,
I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm reading into it, but it seems like part of what you're doing is you're charting your own journey through this
hmm
stuff and how you process it and where it takes you. And I think that one thing that we often forget is that each of our journey through that kind of thing is valuable, that it is worthwhile to tell that story and to experience the transformations that occur along the way. And when you have someone who's as capable of yourself sort of chronicling that, I think it humanizes the process. It makes it more accessible for folks. It allows them, I think, to make more connections than they would normally feel permitted to do, because it's like we're all, well, I'm not an expert on this, so I can't say for sure that, the lyrics of my favorite band are related to what Plato is saying in this book or whatever the examples may be. But those connections are there to be made. And even if they're not, concretely, deployed by whoever the artist was, it has that resonance for you, and therefore there's value in it, and we should explore it. So I think that that's one of the reasons why I so appreciate your work, because I think that you're on the edge of where a lot of people are going to be, hopefully coming up in the next few years as we wrestle with what may be this revelation that may be looming. If not,
mm,
I think that people are going to be going this way anyway, because the old ways have kind of reached their limit. So I appreciate your
yeah.
work, man.
Yeah, well, thank you. I did want to mention that for me, there is this kind of alchemical process, this mixing together, this kind of putting these things and putting them in one place and creating this object, this art object. And to me, the investigation of art, the investigation of music is a purifying, a spiritual process. And I do try to make myself I'm the lab rat for a lot of what's going on. I'm the one, I'm the Frankenstein monster on the gurney there, having the near-death experience, with the heart exam thing that I did and having that injection. Um, and just to show, I'm a guy learning any of this. I'm an interested person who wants to share my enthusiasm of the music and my love for the subject matter with anyone who's wants to dig it. And if some people say, "Oh, I checked out that Sun Ra thing. Oh, I re-listened to Brian Eno's," and I feel like, okay, mission accomplished. Great.
Yeah.
That's what I was hoping for. So thank you on all of those counts.
Yeah. It's like even, I mean, going back and looking at some of the stuff with new eyes. Like, I mean, I haven't listened to a Yes album in years. As a musician in a rock band, they were like supreme beings, when I was younger because they're just so amazing at their music. But I'm gonna go and give it a new set of ears, I guess, coming up.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear. James, it is always great to speak to you and to get your insights. So thank you so much for taking the time. I know reading a book and you read it pretty quickly. The uh the what is it called? Advanced review copy just came out and you gobbled it up. So much
Yeah,
appreciated, my friend.
no problem. When's it come out? Is it when's the
Oh yeah.
release?
It's available for pre-order now.
Okay,
It's on wherever you buy books, you should be able to get it.
okay,
And it's published by Loyola University of Maryland. And it publishes officially on April 11th, and that date was chosen. It's my good friend who passed away. That's his birthday, so I tried to choose an auspicious date. But it's
yeah.
available wherever you can get books. If you have questions, you can go to mikefiorito.com, and I'd be happy to entertain questions that you have. And if you want to get a signed copy, I'll be getting a bunch in a couple of weeks.